We welcome you to our Chapter 49 podcast. Today is Wednesday, November 27th, 2024, our day before Thanksgiving. Uh, Podcast today. My name is Larry Lannan. I'm a retiree and a volunteer with Chapter 49. Of course, as we mentioned before, Chapter 49 represents most IRS employees in the state of Indiana, and we welcome once again our chapter president, Duncan Giles.
Thanks, Larry. It's always good to be here.
Joyous time. It's a time to enjoy a holiday season. I don't know about you, this is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving that we are recording this, but I always think about the Friday after Thanksgiving. How many Fridays after Thanksgiving did you work while working for the federal government?
When I was newer, several,
Well, that's
several of
what
them.
the newer ones are the ones that I had to do. I remember the first few I had to do when I was in toll free. I was like one of a handful of people. Nobody was there other than myself and a handful of others who, again, didn't have seniority. Although as I got along in my career, I actually liked to work that day because there are so few other people around, you could get more work done.
And I've talked to a couple of people already this morning for just that. And a quick Black Friday story working. One time I was working, was going to get a gift for my daughter. My ex-wife had tasked me with getting a gift for my daughter, a life-size Barbie. So I went into the store right when it opened, got the life-size Barbie, put it in my car, went to work. And, the seatmates around me this was my first or second year. And my seatmates around me were like going, well, did you get it? Yeah, I got it. Well, you need to bring her in so we can all see her. So for the rest of the day, while I was taking phone calls in my cubicle, people were coming by to pay their respects to my life-size Barbie that my daughter Maddie got. So Maddie, did not come from Santa Claus. I win on Black Friday for you.
Well, I would say this, it's just a good thing we weren't doing video in those days.
Yeah.
People would
Yeah.
think that that's your coworker there next to you. Well, that's a good story. I don't have there's one thing that happens in downtown Indianapolis. The federal building in downtown Indianapolis is about 4 blocks from what we call the Monument Circle, kind of the center of downtown. And we have something called Circle of Lights, where it's a union group, the IBEW. They donate their time to put lights up. They call it the world's largest Christmas tree. I'm not sure it really is, but it sounds good. And this huge monument, lights are put on it, and huge party is had. And doesn't matter what the weather is. Sometimes it's been windy and snowy and cold. There's still a ton of people there for that. And so a lot of us would go after we would finish work and just walk over to the Circle of Lights. That's always a very big event in downtown Indianapolis.
Yeah,
Let's
tens of thousands, if not around 100,000 now that they have at times.
It's an amazing crowd every year, and the weather doesn't seem to stop anybody. Let's move on to our issues of this week. And again, we're early because it's Thanksgiving week. And we are beginning to see more and more nominees being announced by the incoming Trump administration. What I would like for you to do, Duncan, is talk about some of the key nominees that have been announced and how that may or may not affect IRS and federal employees in general.
Yeah, some of them have been, the person who has been going to be nominated isn't nominated yet, but is going to be nominated for Treasury Secretary. Seems to be a pretty solid middle of the road choice. He's a hedge fund manager. He has been involved with the president-elect's campaign, but also been involved in other parties before that. So we're hoping this will be a good thing. One of the ones that gives one trepidation is the nominee for the Office of Management and Budget is a former acting director there, and this person does not seem to be very favorably disposed to federal employees. We're hoping this time around that it'll be a little bit better, but it's still a great unknown. So as we watch some of these appointments shape up, we're wondering, how it's going to impact us. People are, again, we want people to be prepared, but don't be afraid. NTU's here, NTU's fighting. We're going to be joining all other federal employee unions in making sure that federal employee rights are protected. And in conversations I've had with our national president, Doreen Greenwald, our national VP, Terry Scott, and our folks at NTU National, they are fully prepared to do whatever they need to make sure that our collective bargaining rights are upheld and that the rights that we have via the contract are, that standard is going to be, kept.
Our commissioner, Danny Werfel, is currently in a 5-year term. I guess the president could fire him if he really wanted to, but at least up to now, I've seen no indication that he's in any danger. What are you hearing?
That's a really good question. From what I'm hearing, Commissioner Werfel is moving forward and doing his thing. Basically not worrying about what's going to happen after January the 20th. So I haven't heard a lot of scuttlebutt about his job. I think Commissioner Werfel's done a very nice job. Do I agree with everything that he's done? Absolutely not. But it would be very strange if I did. But I think that he's overall done a very fine job. He does listen to employees. He wants to make sure he knows employees are our biggest asset and resource. And when you have a commissioner who realizes that, that is half the battle right there. So he's trying to move things forward. I hope that he's allowed to stay to serve out his term. But again, we just don't know at this point.
We would expect right after the inauguration, this happens often, that a new president will issue a flurry of executive orders. Is there anything that our union will be looking for in particular when we see this flurry of orders come through?
Yeah, we're not sure how fast some of these executive orders are going to be and what they're going to be in regards to the federal workforce. He said on day one he wants to get working on immigration. So is that going to be his concentration, or is it going to be multifaceted? We just don't know at this point, but we'll be watching for things like an expansion of Schedule F or even Schedule F on steroids. Because again, when you take a look at what was in the president's platform, president-elect's platform, as well as Project 2025, which is now fully embraced, which you and I had talked about in podcasts during the election season, that they were going to be doing this. You don't get a playbook and not use it. They are going to be using it. And that has some rather draconian things in it in regards to federal employees. We don't know what's going to be enacted or what they're going to want to do or try to do. But rest assured that NTEU will be watching this, monitoring it, and taking any actions that they need to at any time.
Kind of re-educate or just kind of go over again what Schedule F is all about, because as things stand now and have for a long time, there are a handful of presidential appointees at the very top federal agencies. For example, in the Treasury Department, there's an assistant secretary of the Treasury for tax policy, for example. At the IRS, there are only 2 presidential appointees. One would be the commissioner that is supposed to serve a 5-year term, and Mr. Werfel is in that term now. And we have the person who heads up the Office of Chief Counsel. That would be the attorneys that do the work for the IRS. So those are the only 2 presidential appointees. What Schedule F would do if it were implemented the way it's been discussed in, diatribes like the 2025 plan and other papers from people who are trying to change the federal government and its workforce, that would create more presidential appointees further down in the management chain. We don't know how far, but we think it's going to be in the tens of thousands of people government-wide. How that would impact IRS is anybody's guess. But the part about that, and I want you to kind of go over that again, but there's another aspect of this. If in fact this happened, there would be something called a reduction in force, or a RIF. I went through a training class many years ago when IRS thought they were going to have to go through a RIF and did not end up doing so. A RIF is one of the most unbelievable, complicated systems you can ever imagine. it would take months, maybe a couple of years to do the riffs that you would have to do because you're looking at, the kind of job, the geography involved. I mean, it's a nightmare to go through that thing. I went to a class when it went step by step, and you just wouldn't believe it. So my question to you is, how would Schedule F work if they being the new administration wants to replace a lot of top, I don't think it would get to the bargaining unit, but certainly into certain parts of management and say that we are not presidential appointees. Well, if you do that, you're going to have to rift the people in those jobs now. So talk a little bit about the complexity of how that would have to be handled.
Yeah, it could be multifaceted. They could try and do a riff, as you said. Those are tremendously complicated and onerous. They could do early outs, which are basically offering money to go ahead and retire or retire early. Um, or what they possibly could do is say they're going to make Schedule F, and what Schedule F does is takes people from the civil service protections and puts them basically into an at-will state of employment, so that if you're a Schedule F employee, you don't have those protections, and as a political appointee, so to speak, they could go ahead and fire you. And they're doing this, what they say, to policymakers, and that's where the rub comes in, because what's the definition of a policymaker? It comes all the way down. I've seen some that have come all the way down to a clerical level as a policymaker. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what they try to do, how fast they want to do it. You'll also have the Doge Commission that is going to be there. That's headed by two friends of the president-elect, as well as the apparently the congressional representative who is going to be the liaison is going to be Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's not proved to be a friend to federal employment overall. Let's put it that way. So we're not sure how all of this is going to play. There's just so many unknowns right now, and that's what people I've talked to is you can't have a fear of the unknown. You can't control it. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. You react to that at that point. But worrying about it, we want to think about it, but you don't want to worry about it. It's a fine distinction, but you don't want to lay awake at night saying, okay, I'm relatively new. I'm going to be riffed, or I'm really close to retirement, but I'm not quite there. Am I going to be able to make it? You don't want to worry about those things yet. Let's see how this all rolls out, and then work on it from there. Is this a true something that really excites the president-elect? Is this going to be one of his priorities? Is the word I was looking for. We don't know that yet. So until then, we've got a bunch of unknowns, and we're just going to have to wait and see how it rolls out.
Well, Duncan, all I can say is I spent, 6 years or so managing taxpayer assistance centers. I don't think too many presidential appointees would last very long in that job. It's a pretty tough job, and I can tell you, I didn't make any policy to speak of. You're pretty much told what to do. You do have to make some decisions, but policy making, no. And when you talked about the Doge, an acronym for Department of Government Efficiency, and I call it the doggy. But I think that may be an insult to dogs, so maybe I should call it the Doge as well. I don't know. So we're watching all this carefully, and on this podcast and on our Facebook page, we will keep you up to date on that. In case you want a reminder, our Facebook page, you can find that on Facebook. Just search under NTEU Chapter 49 Indiana. You can follow or like our page, and we try to update that on a regular basis as there is news to report. Well, there are some other issues we're watching also at NTEU. There are great interest to people in our union, people working for the federal government. One's the budget. The budget we have now is on a continuing resolution through December 20th. Speaker of the House has had a few comments. I don't think, of course, the Senate's changing leaders, but Mitch McConnell is still the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. Chuck Schumer, at least for a few more weeks, is the majority leader. uh, kind of more or less in charge of the calendar of the Senate, and will have the same speaker. They've changed the rules, by the way, for speakers. It used to be really easy to depose the speaker. The new speaker has decided he's going to change the rules, so it's going to be harder to change speakers now, which doesn't surprise me for his job security. But he has made a few comments, but we really don't have a lot of specifics on what the Congress is going to do with the budget. They're going to kick the can down the road again, or will there be a final budget approved? We don't know, and we're watching carefully on this.
Yeah, there's not a whole bunch of discussion on the budget right now, which is quite interesting because, like you said, we're about 3.5 weeks from running out of funding for the government December the 20th. So we don't know what's going to be happening. They have talked about doing a 3 or 4 month continuing resolution again, and other people said, well, we don't want the president elect to, in his first 100 days, have to wrestle with a budget because you are going to need bipartisan support for a budget. I mean, that's been shown over the last several years, probably well over the last decade, that you're going to have both parties, parts of both parties agree on a budget. So it's not going to be something that one party or another is going to be able to ram through with just their priorities. So we don't know what's happening. We haven't really heard anything. We don't know if they're going to try, and I can't imagine at this point they're going to be able to pass appropriations bills that would pass both houses. If the Senate started passing appropriations bills, they probably wouldn't pass the House, and vice versa. The appropriations bills that have passed the House that would fund the government, including the IRS, would not pass the Senate. So we have to basically wait and see. Are they going to try and do, the omnibus, where they just put everything into one big bill, say here's the total bottom line, and we've got it parsed out, and everybody vote on it, and you can vote up or down? Or are they going to do another continuing resolution? At this point, we just haven't heard much of anything, but unfortunately, that's not unusual. We'll probably start hearing more probably about mid-December when it gets down to crunch time.
Well, yes, and there've been times those omnibus bills, they may even put them online so people can read them, but they're so huge. I don't think anybody, even with a large staff that parse, that split it up, I don't think anybody can read an omnibus bill in full and understand it before you vote on it. And that's the downside of an omnibus
Yep.
bill. There are many. That's one of them. Again, we have a pay raise proposal out there. We've talked about it before. We've pushed very hard. NTU has for a higher pay raise than has been proposed, but the pay raise is supposed to become effective during the first full pay period of the new calendar year. So you don't get that like right away in January. It's usually later in January that you actually see any pay raise when it becomes effective. So remind everybody where the pay raise is, what the proposal is, and how NTU is still trying to work on
Yeah.
something better.
Yeah, the proposal, as the president has stated, is 1.7% for everyone, and then a 0.3% for locality, which would make up to close to 2% for most parts of the country. Some parts that have very expensive cost of living, New York, LA, Chicago, might get a little bit more than 2%. Some others might get a little bit less than 2%, but right around that number. IRS is not IRS. NTU has been pushing very hard for pay parity with the military, with our friends in Congress, and with the administration. The administration still has to come out with the final word, or Congress can change it if they decide in a omnibus bill, or if they decide to do a continuing resolution. They could also include a pay raise in that. That would be rare, but it could happen. So we're pressing for that. But as of yet, we haven't heard any word on it changing. We're hopeful, but I would not count on that at this point.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted on that here and on our Facebook page. I want to talk about an issue that used to impact me all the time. How many times have the people watching or listening to this podcast been told, all right, you have a training class that begins at 8 a.m. on Monday morning? or you have a big meeting or gathering, starts at 8 a.m. Monday morning. And often you have to travel. If you don't have to travel, it's not an issue. But a lot of times you have to travel to get to the location of this meeting, unless it's online. But if it's in person, you have to be there at 8 a.m. on Monday. Well, how do you handle the time you have to spend to travel to this training class meeting, whatever event it might be? This has been an issue NTEU and IRS have wrestled with for a very long time. We have a recent memorandum, if I say it right, a memorandum of understanding that has clarified this. So talk about the issue and how NTEU and IRS have come to a meeting of the minds on this.
Yeah, basically what's happened is we've heard of people not getting paid or compensated when they've flown or done something, flown, traveled, however they're getting there to a meeting like you described on a Monday morning or something of that nature, and having to fly out on a Sunday, or having to fly out uh, before or after their tour of duty, those types of things, and not being compensated for that. So there is something now that will make sure that folks who do this type of thing are getting properly compensated. We want to make sure that if you are an non-FLOSSA, you federal labor. Basically, it's if you're considered a certain type of profession, you're considered FLOSSA exempt, which means you don't get overtime, things of that nature. And those would be like your revenue agents. They're capped, but they would get compensation time. If you are a revenue officer, somebody working in TAS, somebody working in one of our walk-in offices, then you would be able to get time and a half, depending upon the time of day that you are traveling, if it's outside your tour of duty, or perhaps on a Saturday or Sunday where you have to travel. So those are the things that we have to look at to make sure that people are getting compensated properly, and NTU has worked with IRS to make sure that that has all been ironed out and taken care of.
Yeah, what you referred to there under FLOSSA, some people call it FALSA, some people call it FLOSSA, is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which I don't know about you, Duncan, is one of the strangest, most open to interpretation statutes I have ever encountered.
Yeah, it really is. Because, okay, why does this particular position floss exempt and this one is not? It gets to be very down in the weeds as to who is and who isn't. And it almost is like what your particular position description says. And it will say floss exempt or non-flossa. So it will talk about that in your position description, but you literally have to go there to find out which part you are that you might be entitled to overtime or not.
Duncan, we want to talk about this every time we have a podcast within this period of time, because we're in a very important open season for your federal employee benefits, particularly health insurance, but others like under what are called benefits, and have dental and vision and some other insurance products that you can avail yourself of. I have a couple of those myself. So we've got the federal employee health benefits open season where you can change the carrier that you use. It's very important, and just a reminder, but what NTEU offers you as far as help in making that decision.
Yeah, and again, I beat the drum on this every week, and I will continue to do so during open season, because I think it's just vitally important for people to look for the right plan for them and their family, however that consists of, whether it's just them, themselves and a spouse, or dependent children, because there are a lot of plans out there. You don't have to choose the most expensive one. You figure out a plan, contact your doctor's offices, or look in a directory. Are my doctor's office or the services I use covered? If not, you don't want to use that one. But if they are, you may want to take a look at it. And so on the NTU website, there is something called the Consumer Checkbook that we offer to all members, where you can go in and get details on these plans and compare them. You can literally compare a plan apples to apples to see what might work best. Our partners at United Benefits that we had on a couple of weeks ago with Zach also have something called the benefits genius. And what the genius does is it drills down even further, and basically you input the information that you have, how big is your family, where are you located, what type of health expenses are you expecting, that sort of thing. And the genius will pop out a couple of different plans that would best suit you. So it almost takes the guesswork out of it, which I think is very, very handy to have. So it's just other things that we can do to try and put more money back in our members' pockets.
And also, there's an opportunity to participate or re-up for the combined federal campaign for next year. So talk more about that.
Yep, the CFC, excuse me, the CFC is a great and wonderful way to give back. And just about every organization under the sun will be out there. Anything that you are passionate about that you want to help people with can be done. It can be done as a one-time benefit. It can be done as, on your paycheck. It can even be done in, volunteering for a particular organization. So we very much believe in CFC, both national NTU and Chapter 49 absolutely backs it, as do many of my brethren across the country, because we know that it does good work and it can actually help people and impact lives. And that's what we're all here for, ultimately, anyway, helping the taxpayer. This is another way to help your fellow man or woman.
I was about to say, Duncan, you always talk about your fellow brethren. Don't forget about the sisterhood here, okay? I don't want to get you in trouble here. I want to make sure you recognize your fellow sisters in the NTU as well.
Absolutely.
We've got Thanksgiving coming up the day after we record this podcast. And I don't know about you, but most everyone finds some way to gather for a Thanksgiving dinner, whether it's family, friends, a combination of both. And if you know someone who doesn't have that, invite them into your own home. I think that's always a good idea. But I think the one thing we need to make sure that people consider as you move into your Thanksgiving dinner is that, we all have different views on a number of subjects, political, social, you name it. And let's face it, Thanksgiving is not a time to have political arguments. I mean, you're going to have differences. This is not the time to bring it up. My little 2 cents worth. Yours.
I wholeheartedly agree, Larry. Yeah, basically, this is a time to get together. You're always going to have somebody that's going to want to talk. I try in those types of gatherings, don't want to talk politics, don't want to talk religion, don't want to talk money. You just want to have good, you know, a good time with friends and family. This is supposed to be a Thanksgiving holiday, so you don't want it to have to turn into bickering. There's inevitably going to be somebody that's going to want to start pulling people's chains about one thing or the other. Don't engage, and just simply tell them that. Don't engage with that particular person. Say, I'm not engaging in this type of this discourse. You have your opinion, I have mine. Neither one's changing. Let's just have a good meal and a good conversation instead of an argument.
And this is a good time to go to our final comments.
Yeah, mine is going to be based on the same thing as Thanksgiving. I am so, so thankful for the folks that I work with and represent, and my NTU leaders across the country, the folks at NTU National. Thankful for friends like you. Um, Thankful for, my daughter and son-in-law, Madison and Travis, and thankful for my awesome wife, Kim, who is just a treasure beyond words. So, just think about, this is a time to think about what you're truly thankful for and appreciate it. And I hope everybody takes it a part of your day, either today, tomorrow, Friday, whenever you're listening to this, and incorporates that in your regular life, and just be thankful, for what you have. We all have a lot of things that we want more of, but be thankful and appreciative of what you do have.
Yes, Duncan, at my age, I'm thankful every day I wake up and get another day, but that's another matter. I would I think we talked about this last week. Family and friends I do value so much, but when I'm thinking about what I'm thankful for, I go back to 1983 because that was a time in my life where I'd spent about 14 years in the broadcasting business, more than half of those working, hosting talk shows, doing news reporting. It was a a line of work that I absolutely loved. It was tough, it was demanding, the hours were long, days off were rare, but you have to love that work or you wouldn't do it. And I was at a point where I had to make a decision. Do I stay in the Indiana or central Indiana area where I spent most of my life and find another way to make a living? Because I had a line on several jobs in the radio news business, but I was going to have to move. And I know, or I knew at that time, that once you start that cycle in that business, you're going to be moving from city to city for a while. It's just the nature of the business. So I had to decide, do I want to stay in the profession that I dearly loved, or do I have to change professions? So I am very thankful that I ended up working for the federal government, came in at the very bottom, grade three. I was a temp, the Defense Department for a few weeks, and then was hired by IRS permanently as a grade three clerk. But I went to school at night, got credits, accounting credits, which led to my ability to get promoted as I moved along. So I had that opportunity. And now that I'm retired, I was able to take my health insurance with me. I have a nice retirement. It was a very, very good decision. I'm thankful for that decision. And I'm thankful that I was given the opportunity to work for an agency that makes such a big difference in government. And that I had a chance, and I'm thankful for the fact that I got the chance to know and work with wonderful people like yourself. And I can't even count how many people I ran across in my IRS career, whether it was NTEU or in my working at the agency, where I just want to say I'm thankful that I had that opportunity, and I'm thankful that I am where I am today. And Duncan, I can't seem to quit it. I'm still with this podcast, like I'm still with IRS somehow. I never did
Yeah.
leave. But I'm thankful that we have people who are willing to watch and listen. We're continuing to build our audience. I thank all those who watch and listen. That's why Duncan takes time out of his busy day of being a chapter president and week. That's why I donate my time as a retiree to do this. So we're thankful for you, and we plan to keep going as long as we can hang in there, as long as this old retiree can hang in there and produce this. So, Duncan, thank you very much. Enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday. And if you're listening on or before Thanksgiving, enjoyed. If not, I hope you did enjoy your Thanksgiving. So, at this point, we just once again want to wish you a very happy Thanksgiving holiday. We're moving into the Christmas, New Year holiday. We hope everybody enjoys this time, and don't let that hubbub get to you as well. But in the meantime, please be safe and be kind.